You know, sometimes I think democracy is just a polite word for mob rule. 2 wolves and a sheep voting on dinner. Give me a smart monarch any day. At least a king won't pretend the sheep's vote matters.
Ah yes, here we go. Your Royal Highness is at it again. Sure, democracy has its flaws, but at least it lets the sheep fire the wolves once in a while. With a monarch, if you get a bad king, you're stuck until he keels over. Remember, democracy's virtue is we can remove bad rulers without bloodshed. No need for guillotines in the town square every time the boss goes nuts.
True. Your average election spares us the pitchforks. But what if democracy just gives us a parade of bad rulers, one after another? Short-sighted policies, pandering, leaders chosen for popularity over competence. It's like choosing the class president based on who promises free ice cream, not who can run the school. A monarch, a good one mind you, can take the long view and say, no ice cream if it ruins dinner.
Free ice cream sounds great until you get a tummy ache, I get it. But you're assuming our monarch is some philosopher king. What if he's more like, well, a tyrant with a crown? There's a reason we don't let one guy do whatever he likes without responsibility. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? At least democracy forces a bit of responsibility. Rulers have to answer to the people eventually, even if only to con them for votes.
Con being the key word. Democracy often becomes a beauty contest of demagogues. I'd trade 100 glad-handing politicians for one solid, incorruptible CEO of the nation. Think about it. Corporations are run like little monarchies with CEOs, and they get things done. Apple didn't design the iPhone by having all employees vote on every feature. Steve Jobs just led decisively. Why not have a Steve Jobs of government?
You really want to run a country like a corporation? Okay, CEO of America Inc. But remember, if I don't like Apple's product, I can switch to Samsung. If I don't like King Steve's rule, can I switch countries that easily? Democratic nations at least give citizens a voice internally, not just the option to emigrate. And while Apple can go bust if it fails, what happens when a country goes bust under a monarch? It's the people who pay the price, not some shareholders.
Fair points. A government isn't exactly a company with competitors unless we had many mini-states.
I see that look. You're about to bring up elite theory. Go on then, tell me how the people never truly rule, and it's always some hidden club of puppet masters.
You read my mind. Look, the iron law of oligarchy says that in any system, democracy or not, a small elite ends up in charge. In a democracy, we just hide the elites behind the curtain of the people have spoken. Reality, political parties, bureaucrats, donors, media moguls, they call the shots. The voters get a pre-selected menu of options and a lot of pageantry, so why not admit it and put the elite officially in charge? At least then we know who to blame and who to hold accountable.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our new official oligarchy. Sounds like a great campaign slogan, very honest. But seriously, acknowledging elites exist doesn't mean we give up on popular sovereignty. I'd rather have those elites sweat a little at election time, pretend or not, than crown them for life. Fear of the people, even if it's just fear of losing votes, keeps them on somewhat better behavior.
Does it really? Or do they just get better at manipulating the masses? Give them bread and circuses, or Twitter memes, and the crowd cheers while the elites do as they please. I mean, how different is a charismatic populist leader from a king? Both rally supporters, both can abuse power. The difference is, the populist pretends it's the people's will when he does it.
The difference is that the people can turn on the populist if he betrays them. Sure, elites will always exist, but in a healthy system the elites serve the people's interests, not the other way around. It's a two-way street. Elites provide leadership. People provide consent. When that breaks, you get what we have now, mistrust. But the answer isn't to scrap popular will entirely. It's to find better elites, or better ways to keep elites accountable.
Better elites, as if we can just order those from Amazon. Maybe we need elites who don't have to win popularity contests so they can actually make tough decisions. Popular sovereignty sounds nice, but I'd argue we already have an elected aristocracy, career politicians, just one that pretends to be common. Give me a real aristocrat who at least feels a noblesse oblige, instead of a wannabe man of the people who's really in bed with lobbyists.
I'll drink to exposing phonies in plaid shirts pretending to be common folk. But careful what you wish for. That real aristocrat might decide his obligations involve luxury for him, and austerity for you. At the end of the day, I'd still bet on the collective wisdom of regular people over the self-serving instincts of a permanent elite. If nothing else, the crowd can course-correct eventually.
Let's talk state power. Do we keep centralizing like some giant Borg cube, or break it up? I know you populists have a rebellious streak about big government.
Guilty as charged. I do distrust an overly centralized state, DC. Dictating everything from school curricula in Indiana to toilet flush standards in Arizona drives me nuts. Decentralization, more local control, sounds great. But I also want a strong nation that can stand up to global threats. So I'm torn. I want power closer to the people, but I also want the people united when it counts.
Funny enough, we might agree here more than you think. My ideal, inspired by a certain Moldbug Y thinker, is a patchwork of small sovereign units, city-states or regions, each with their own government. Let each be run however it likes, monarchy, technocrat, CEO, communal council, whatever, and let people vote with their feet. If you don't like the rules in Patchlandia, you move to Liberland next door. That's decentralization on a whole new level. A marketplace of governments. Competition would keep rulers honest, theoretically.
The market as a replacement for democracy, you really are full of surprises. So instead of one big country, we'd have hundreds of mini countries all doing governance experiments? I admit, federalism in the US is a bit like that. States can be different laboratories of democracy, but your patchwork sounds like seceding into oblivion. Also, not everyone can just pack up and move easily. Real life isn't an app where you click relocate. Families, jobs, roots. People can't be nomads chasing the best government sale of the week.
True, mass migration every time a local prince raises taxes might be impractical, but look at how people already flock to states that suit their preferences. Californians to Texas, New Yorkers to Florida, etc. It's happening in slow-mo. I'm just suggesting making it official. Let's encourage governance competition. And smaller units mean less centralized coercion. The US federal government wouldn't be so overbearing if states or cities had more real autonomy.
I won't defend every federal diktat, far from it. Decentralization appeals to my inner rebel, but I also worry, if you balkanize into tiny sovereignties, could they defend themselves? What happens when one mini-state goes bad, human rights abuses or whatnot? At least in a big nation, we have some common standards, in theory. I guess I want to decentralize power, but not dissolve our unity entirely. Keep the feds out of my backyard, but keep us 50 stars on one flag for the world stage, you know?
Fair enough. Maybe the answer is something like the original American idea. Strong local governance with a lighter touch central authority. My patchwork might be too wild for prime time. We don't need a Borg, and we don't need complete anarchy of mini-kingdoms. Perhaps something in between.
Here's one. How do we change things? I say bottom up. Grassroots movements. Win elections from school board on up. Build momentum. You probably say top down, just hand the keys to a great leader, and let him re-engineer the machine, right?
Bottom up takes in again. I'm impatient. Boffin fizzles. You gather the pitch, form the ballots, and then some bureaucratic swamp swallows your revolution. Look at anti-establishment presidents who get bogged down by courts, agencies, deep state, not naming names. A decisive top-down reform, say a benevolent coup or a constitutional rewrite by geniuses, could clear out the dead wood in one swoop. Hit the reset button on this old PC instead of waiting for a million updates to maybe fix it.
Did you just openly wish for a coup in our Gentile club? Careful, someone might be listening. But seriously, benevolent coup is one heck of an oxymoron. Top-down change can indeed sweep fast, like Napoleon cleaning up after the French Revolution's mess, but it can also go horribly wrong. You might get your genius dictator, but what if the next guy is a dolt or a psycho? Once you bulldoze democracy, you rely on luck of the draw for every successor. Bottom up, though slower, builds popular support and legitimacy. People tend to protect changes they fought for themselves.
Good point about the psycho successor. History's full of revolutionary leaders who were brilliant followed by numbskulls. But maybe that's where institutions come in. Design a system that locks in good governance. He pauses to sip his drink. Look at Singapore's Lee Kuan Yew. Effectively top-down transformation. And they set up structures that outlived him quite well. My worry is that bottom-up movements get co-opted. Start with noble intentions, end with the same old politicians hijacking it. Occupy Wall Street, Tea Party. Energy gets siphoned by the establishment like a vampire at a blood bank.
There's truth there. Grassroots can be messy and indeed often gets hijacked. But sometimes it works. The civil rights movement in the US was bottom-up with some top-down help at crucial moments, and achieved real change, anchored in people's hearts. If you impose change from above without cultural buy-in, it might not stick, or it breeds resentment underground.
So maybe the secret recipe is a bit of both? A bold leader at the top and a mass movement below, ideally in harmony. Heck, even monarchs needed popular support to be effective. Otherwise, they faced constant revolts. And populist leaders need some institutional muscle once elected to actually get anything done. Perhaps revolution from above meets revolution from below in a perfect storm?
Sounds like a blockbuster movie. Two revolutionaries from opposite directions unite to save the world. I won't hold my breath, but it's a nice thought. At least we agree pure one-way approaches have pitfalls.
Maybe political systems are secondary. Culture and media, that's where the real action is. Your vote matters less than whoever's controlling the microphone and the school curricula. My side calls it the Cathedral, the universities, press, Hollywood, all marching in ideological lockstep to mold how people think. If you don't capture or counter that, changing the politician at the top is like swapping a figurehead while the ship's course stays the same.
Preaching to the choir here. Populists have been complaining about media bias and cultural indoctrination for ages. We just don't use the fancy cathedral metaphor. We say, mainstream media with a huff. It does feel like a collusion sometimes. Certain ideas get you a pat on the head, others get you cancelled. But our answer is not to install a state religion of our own. We fight back with alternative media, memes, YouTube shows, independent schools, bottom-up culture war.
Meanwhile, the powers that be drop the ban hammer on dissident voices. Your populist hero got booted off Twitter, remember? The gatekeepers in big tech, legacy news, academia, they protect the narrative like castle guards. Honestly, sometimes I think the first step in any real reform is to peacefully defund and disband some of these institutions, or at least build parallel ones that eventually eclipse them. A new state or new regime would need to break the hold of the old intellectual class. Otherwise, they'll undermine any changes with propaganda 4/7.
Peacefully disband the media? Good luck, Emperor. Even a monarch needs a PR department. Instead of burning down Harvard or the New York Times, how about outcompeting them? Create universities that teach all perspectives, media outlets that actually respect regular folks. It's happening slowly. See how many people trust random Substack writers or podcasters over CNN nowadays. Sure, the establishment media is powerful, but their credibility is cracking. Culture changes when people stop buying what the elites are selling.
True, forcing change from above in culture can backfire. Propaganda is obvious and unpersuasive if done clumsily. Maybe I'm just vengeful because I see the cathedral as the wizard behind the curtain propping up the whole system I despise. But yes, organic cultural change is more durable. Still, I say a savvy leader would use some top-down influence, break up media monopolies, open the info marketplace, call it free speech enforcement.
Haha, free speech enforcement, making sure everyone gets to talk, not just the anointed experts. I like the sound of that, as long as it doesn't turn into just flipping the script and silencing the other side. Ultimately, culture is a battleground where both of our factions need to engage. The pen or meme can be mightier than the sword or law.
So where does this leave the right? We've got your populist revolt on one hand and my elitist rebellion on the other. Are we destined to fight each other, or do we team up to topple the current order first? The enemy of my enemy and all that.
The right's big tent is complicated. On one hand, populists provide the mass energy. Rallies, votes, a connection to ordinary people's grievances. On the other, you and your neo-monarchist intellectual buddies provide wild new ideas that break us out of stale thinking. Honestly, the future might require a bit of both. Harness populist passion, and have a strategic vision for governance after the victory. Otherwise, we win an election and then say, now what?
Exactly. Populism without a plan can turn into aimless anger or worse, just elect another disappointment. And neo-reactionary ideas without popular support are just blog posts and Silicon Valley dinner talks. There's a scenario in my head. A populist movement paves the way by breaking the establishment's hold, and then, at the right moment, a more radical restructuring, my kind of plan, takes over to rebuild the system properly. Is that too fanciful? Maybe.
I don't know. Populists are wary of handing the baton to some self-proclaimed enlightened elite. We've been burned before. But if that enlightened elite had proven itself on our side, who's to say? In the near term, I see the right experimenting. Some will double down on populist messaging to win elections. Others will quietly build parallel institutions, schools, tech platforms, communities as lifeboats. Perhaps the successful path will become clear by trial and error.
Meanwhile, the left or the establishment just delights that we're split between rabble-rousers and wannabe kings. We should keep debating but not lose sight that we share a lot of common foes, unaccountable bureaucrats, a stifling orthodoxy, a complacent status quo. Maybe the new right is a coalition of strange bedfellows after all.
To strange bedfellows. If we ever do join forces, the other side won't know what hit them. Imagine a movement with brains and brawn, crown and commoner united laughs. But seriously, whatever direction the right takes, whether storming the ballot box or plotting in the ivory tower, it better deliver results for people. If not, people will lose faith in us, just as they've lost faith in the current lot.
Here. At the end of the day, both of us care about building something better than this circus we have now. Whether it's power to the people or long live the king, the goal is a stable, thriving society.
Agreed, we just argue about the packaging. And hey, maybe the future right blends a bit of monarchy with a bit of democracy, who knows? A king who listens to the people, or a people smart enough to pick a good king. Now that is fanciful.
I won't hold my breath for King George VII of America, but I will keep polishing my crown in the closet, just in case.
And I'll be here sharpening my pitchfork, figuratively speaking of course, just to keep you monarchists on your toes.